Hey y'all, Carpetbagger here, coming to you live from the south, more specifically, Whiteville, North Carolina, and I am very excited. To me, this is a very personal journey, a completion of a adventure that has been going on for the past 6 years, the completion of a cycle. And I guess we'll just start here by explaining, here in the state of North Carolina, just by complete happenstance, we have the 3 most famous conjoined or Siamese twins in the world. The 3 most famous Siamese twins in the world are buried in the state of North Carolina for no real reason other than coincidence. So, my journey started Mount Airy, North Carolina, which is also the hometown of Andy Griffith and is generally recognized as the prototype for the town of Mayberry in the Andy Griffith Show. Now, in addition to the Andy Griffith tourism there, we also have the graves of Chang and Ang Bunker, the original Siamese twins, being that they were actually from Siam, which gave the name Siamese twin to all conjoined twins. Now, Chang and Ang, I think they were associated with P.T. Barnum. They toured the whole world, absolute medical marvels at the time. And I guess during their tours, they visited North Carolina and absolutely fell in love with the area. It's a beautiful area, especially whole state's beautiful, but Mount Airy, very beautiful, very picturesque. So the Bunker twins settled down there, bought a plantation, bought some slaves. Shame on you, Chang and Ang Bunker. Not cool. But it was a different time. Still not cool. Don't buy slaves. But they married a pair of Irish sisters. Each one, they had tons of kids. They, would actually had a bed built for 4. Very complicated relationship. Sounds like it would be today, if this happened, it would be an absolutely amazing reality show. And they have tons of descendants. And actually, because of this, there's actually in Mount Airy, North Carolina, and the mountains of North Carolina, is actually a very large portion of the population that have Siamese ancestry in that area. Now, Chang was actually a bad alcoholic. Ang was not affected by this because I guess their circulatory systems were not conjoined. They're actually conjoined by a band of flesh on their stomachs, and apparently there was some discussion in later years of could they have easily been separated because it was only a thin band, but I think it was determined that even modern science wouldn't have been able to separate them. I think there was some important stuff in that band of skin. So anyway, Chang, his health went downhill from his extreme drinking, and one night he died in bed with his brother. His brother died very shortly afterwards, and an interesting, very interesting tidbit there is on the certificate of death for Ang Bunker, they put that he died of fright. Died of fright of waking up connected to a dead person. And if I woke up and I was physically bonded to a dead body, I may die of fright as well. So they are buried at a little white church in Mount Airy. When I found this, I was very low tech at the time. No GPS. I think I might have had a flip phone, no smartphone. So I was out in Mount Airy. I was actually on a business trip up there, and I really wanted to see this. But I did not prepare. I didn't know where this was. So I had my wife on the phone. She's Googling this all over the internet, trying to help me find it. I'm sorry. I almost fell in a grave there. Sorry about that. So my wife is Googling it on the phone with me, giving me directions, finally find the church. I'm so excited. And then she's looking up pictures of the cemetery, looking up pictures of the grave on the internet, trying to help me find it. You know, I've been to lots of graveyards trying to find the graves of famous people or people that I find interesting, folk heroes. It is so much harder than you think. You show up, you're like, oh, well, here's the graveyard. Oh, some graveyards are, it's just about impossible unless you know what you're looking for. But anyway, found them buried in the cemetery. Very cool. So that leads us to our second set of Siamese twins buried here in the state of North Carolina, and that is Daisy and Violet Hilton, not to be confused with the other pair of Hilton sisters. And they are actually a British, two British sisters that were conjoined. They were adopted by this wicked old lady who beat them, and like a dance mom type lady beat them, made them learn to perform instruments and dance. They performed all over the world, and you know, as they think of this, they got a little older. You know, when they were little girls performing, looking adorable, I think their act was getting, you know, pretty popular. I think as they got older, maybe a little less presentable, as well as maybe freak shows not being as popular as they once were, they kind of started to fall on hard times. And when they finally separated from their manager, they didn't really know how to deal with working their own money. I think there was a couple strange marriages. I think there was if I remember correctly, there's a movie. I think it's called Connected for Life. I don't know. I watched it on Netflix, but it's a very good movie, a documentary about their lives. But I believe there was some like fake marriage where one of them, as a publicity stunt to try to get back in the limelight, married a gay man, one of their gay friends, to try to, you know, stir up a news story of a Siamese twin getting married. So anyway, you know, they suffered. There's, you know, they did not deal with their money. They were losing their money, very poor, and they hooked up with another manager who turned out to be just as crooked as their past managers. And you know, they were going on a world tour. They traveled to Charlotte, North Carolina, where they did a show, and their manager took all their money and split town, leaving them completely abandoned. They didn't have anything to their name, left alone in Charlotte. These poor, naive ladies who'd been sheltered their whole life, left with nothing, no family, no friends. Fortunately, Southern hospitality reaches in, and the community reaches out. They make friends in the community. They get a job at a local grocery store where one of the twins would actually ring up your items, and the other one would bag your items, the one connected back there. And so I set out to find the grave of Daisy and Violet Hilton, who are buried in Charlotte. You know, they stayed in Charlotte the rest of their lives after being abandoned there. So I go to the graveyard, and like I said, never as easy as you think it's going to be unless you're very, very prepared. So I get there, and this cemetery is about the biggest cemetery I've ever seen, just sprawling. And I wander around, trying to find it like a moron. And eventually, I'm like, yeah, this is not going to work. Again, low tech. I did not have a smartphone at the time. I think I tried to use like the limited internet connection on my flip phone, but couldn't figure out how to do that. So I stuck up my pride, and I go into the funeral home, and you know, there's a nice old lady up at the front, and I ask, I just came here. I was curious about the Siamese Twins, Daisy and Violet Hilton, that are buried at this cemetery. I want to know if you could tell me where it is. She didn't know where it was. And then she says, but you know what? When I was a little girl, I remember at the grocery store, there was a set of Siamese twins that worked there. And she said, I wonder if that was the same ones. I don't know. This is a little silly. I mean, how many sets of Siamese twins were there in Charlotte, North Carolina at that period of time? But she actually went and got a lady. I think they were having a funeral at the time. Maybe I was being rude, but they were not being rude because they were being very helpful. This nice lady, she comes and actually gets in her car, tells me to follow her, and she drives me out to where Daisy and Violet Hilton's graves are. And one thing that makes it even more difficult to find is the fact that they don't have their own gravestone. They were still very poor when they died. They had a friend whose name is evading me right now, but he was a veteran, and he was close friends, and he actually allowed them to kind of piggyback his plot. They're buried under his gravestone. They kind of tacked on. There's a little marker on the ground. They tacked them on. So kind of sad that these once international performers had to double up and borrow this man's grave. Very nice of him to share his grave with these ladies, but kind of a sad story in a way. But in other ways, it's kind of a good story. They had abuse their whole life. They had money, but they were not respected. They were abused, and they may have died with no money, but they died with friends, the southern hospitality of the people of Charlotte, North Carolina. Okay, so that's 2 sets of twins that I have found, and today I've completed the cycle, and I found the 3rd set of Siamese twins here in North Carolina. Now I'll show you this. Hang on. Okay, what we have there behind me is the grave of Christine and Millie McCoy. Now, I think they lived in the 1840s, and they were African-American Siamese twins. Do the math there, they were slaves. So, how Daisy and Violet were figurative slaves to their evil stage mother, the Christine and Millie were literal slaves. So that made it very easy for people to control them and to use and to sell and buy their contracts. They were sold and bought between various carnival workers, showmen who would take them around the world. And they did perform around the world. I think I read that the 2 girls actually knew 5 different languages. They were excellent singers. So they had a lot of talents in addition to being Siamese twins. And apparently their nickname was the Two-Headed Nightingale, in a reference to their singing. Abraham Lincoln makes the Emancipation Proclamation and frees all slaves. Well, originally frees some of the slaves, then later frees the rest of the slaves. So Millie and Christine. Oh, by the way, apparently their stage name was Millie Christine. They tried to pretend like it was one person with 2 heads, and said that they would always correct people. Oh no, we're Millie Christine. We're not Christine and Millie. Probably more of a marketing thing than how they actually felt. I'm sure these ladies had different identities, even though they were conjoined. So anyway, they were freed after the Civil War. My understanding is that their old owner, did not want to. I guess he wanted to shift into a manager position. So he actually went and found their mother and brought them to them. I think they were living in England at the time. Went and retrieved their biological mother, brought them to them as I guess, a peace offering to help reestablish a relationship that was a manager and clients rather than an owner and slaves. So they're originally buried in an unmarked grave somewhere here in this county. But at some point, let's see here. Looks like in 1970, which would have been some time after they died, they were disinterred and given a proper burial here at this cemetery. It's nice that the town did recognize them, buried, in an unmarked pauper's grave, and then the town shows some recognition to these ladies. And the road here, actually the road back there, it's actually called Millie Christine Road. So they're, anyway, they are honored here in this small town of Whiteville. And so that is the 3 Siamese Twins of North Carolina. But let's not stop there, because we have a bonus set of twins. They're not Siamese twins, but they do hold a very special place in history. They were known as the McCrary Twins. Now, when I was a kid, I remember getting the Guinness Book of World Records. It was always exciting. We had book fair every year, and every year, either me or one of my friends would get the Guinness Book of World Records. We were really into that stuff. And I remember this picture, these 2 twins. A lot of people probably know what I'm talking about, but there's these 2 giant twins riding 2 tiny motorbikes, the world's fattest twins, who hold the record to this day. The world's fattest twins, born and bred in Hendersonville, North Carolina. And yes, I have been out there, and I have been to the grave of the McCrary Twins. Actually, the McCrary Twins, by trade, were professional wrestlers, which I note in these videos I do seems to come up quite a bit. But the McCrary Twins were these giant professional wrestlers. They changed their name to their ring name was the McGuire Twins, and the reason for this is that one of the brothers actually made a statement when they asked him why did they change their name when they became wrestlers. And apparently when they would go wrestle in Japan, the announcers would call them the McQuarrie Twins. McQuarrie. And he said, they're calling us the McQuarrie Twins, and we ain't queers. So they went with the name of the McGuire Twins. I think it was taken from the McGuire sisters. So, yeah, very iconic picture of them when they're riding their little motorbikes. And then they were just massive wrestlers. Just very interesting stuff. And the thought of these 4 amazing, remarkable sets of twins all being buried in North Carolina. And now in my adventures, I've had the pleasure of visiting every single one of them. Completed here by visiting Millie Christine in Whiteville, North Carolina. So I appreciate it. Thank you for watching this. Please visit my website if you get a chance, www.thecarpetbagger.org. I talk about various things, focused mainly here in the South. Talk about Siamese twins, other things as well. Other circus performers, circus freaks, as they are called. I do not use that as a derogatory term, because that is the correct terminology of the time. But in addition to that, Southern culture, roadside attractions, folk heroes, interesting things, just kind of what I find interesting down here in the South. Sometimes we venture outside of the South, do videos, blogs, photography. Check it out if you got a chance. www.thecarpetbagger.org, and I appreciate it so much. Thank you.